Welcome to Tough Talk. My guest today is Tom Weisskopf, Professor of Economics at Michigan University and a well-known scholar on the important issue of reservations and affirmative action. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
No, you have been observing reservations, affirmative action policies in India and in the US. Now, as regards India is concerned, over the last 40, 50 years in your studies and your own interpretation, how well have you done?
Yeah, well, you know, it's very difficult to get an overall report because there have been, I think, clearly some positives and negatives. And in fact, I think one has to look at affirmative action like any other public policy as one which carries certain benefits and entails certain costs. And measuring precisely the relationship between those benefits and costs is difficult. So what I tried to do in my study of this question was to make some broad guesses about how it ends up after noting what are the positive and the negative features.
Well, before we come to the evaluation,
right, yeah.
We have got a reservation, a quota system.
Right.
Is there any other, the US, for example, is affirmative action. Can you just explain the difference? And is there any country in the world that has a system like ours?
No, I think certainly the system is unique, but that could probably be said about every system. There are differences.
But is it uniquely rigid?
Probably it's the most rigid such system, yeah. I would think that's, at least that I'm aware of. I'm most familiar with just the two cases. Certainly if you compare India with the United States, reservations as applied here are considerably more rigid than the affirmative action in the United States. We did, in the early stages of affirmative action in the United States, there were, in some instances, quota systems. Of course, it's much more decentralized there, so it wasn't a single national policy, but it was applied in various contexts by universities or by businesses.
And what were the results of these initial experiments?
It's hard to say because they didn't last long. They were challenged on legal grounds, and for the most part, it was determined that this was not an appropriate way to move forward based on the sort of U.S. legal context and our Constitution, which does not have the features of the Indian Constitution, which specifically provide for certain benefits for disadvantaged classes. So,
well, but you know, since you mentioned constitutions, constitutions do get changed, and in India we've had more reservations. I mean, more amendments to the Constitution, and faster amendments than probably you change your toothbrush. We've got about 107 amendments over the last 55, 60 years. So the Constitution certainly can't be an excuse for us persisting with the system. Why are we persisting with this system? For example, let me just come to the crux of the matter. Should there be reservations, not affirmative action, reservations for SC, STs today in India, in your opinion?
I think that there should be some form of strong affirmative action. My own personal view is that there are better ways to do it than strict reservations. On the other hand, we should recognize that reservations doesn't mean that quotas are filled with just anybody in order to meet the quota. There are always minimal qualifications that apply.
But you know, this was the argument used back in 1950, and they said that, listen, we will review this policy after 10 years. It's 60 years and counting. So when does this end?